Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone, and welcome to another seminar in our series of seminar in the intelligent secure system. Today we have with us Dr. Tarik Abdelrheem. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Global Studies, and he's going to talk to you about face and body recognition and their application in secure intelligent system. Dr. Tarik graduated with a PhD in cognitive neuroscience from Friedrich-Schiller University in Jena, Germany. His present research focuses on the intersection of neuroscience and psychology related to face perception, body recognition, and voice perception. Dr. Tarik is going to speak for about, let's say, 45 minutes.
Inshallah.
Then we're going to have 15 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yahya. And as Dr. Yahya introduced me, I'm a psychologist. So I have to give you some psychological introduction about faces and the body recognition. So let me, at the beginning, tell you about why faces are special. One of the life event or life examples that when we're meeting people, it's easier for us to remember faces. But when you're trying to remember other information related to this person, it will be very difficult and complicated, like as a name. By looking at the face, you can get a lot of information about the personality. One of these information that you can get it is about gender, about age, about the originality of the person. But you're still facing a big problem to associate between faces and other personal information related to this person. And this is a big question that researchers try to answer it since 1976, when Bruce and Young start to see how the visual memory be receiving faces and why faces are special. So I will try to give you just a small introduction to understand why faces are special. And one reason for speciality of the faces, if you're looking at this picture in front of you, you can easily perceive the originality of those people in this picture. You can identify easily the people who coming from the same originality or the same nationality. But in other people, you will find for you it's difficult, but you can anticipate and predict about different information related to those individuals. So one of the advantages of the faces, that faces may engage attention to a greater extent than other objects. If you're looking at the cars, every day you just watching 100,000 of cars while you are driving your car, but you couldn't remember the color. You couldn't remember the different types of these cars. But for faces, even if sometimes you're meeting some people for just one time in your life and you find yourself just can remember the faces, but you couldn't remember other information such as names, as I told you. So this is one evidence which make us faces are special. Another evidence coming from neuroimaging studies. I know that you are engineering, but let me just tell you something about biology of our brain. Interestingly, when the researcher of the field of neuropsychology and cognitive neuroscience start using different techniques like as EEG, electroencephalography, as well fMRI, they succeeded to identify a certain area which responding massively to faces, not to other visual modalities. These kind of areas showing some kind of selection to faces in compare to other visual categories. So it means that our brain include a certain area that processing faces and keeping faces for a long time. And this is considered as a second evidence for why faces are special. The third evidence coming from the visual search task experiment and studies, and when you present faces with different objects, you find that faces capturing attention, and capturing attention, it means that you take long time to process the faces, because when you're looking at the face, you find these facial features just make some kind of communication with your brain, and you find your response is very slow. And this is just make faces are very special category. Different researcher try to put a model to explain faces. I just try to find a familiar picture for you. If you're looking at the picture in your right side, I believe that you remember this is High Excellency, the ex-rector of the University of KFUPM, Dr. Khalid Sultan. In the other hand, you'll find my picture. Maybe this is the first time for you to see me. Dr. Khalid Sultan, considered as a familiar face for you. You can receive and process information more quickly in comparison to the other pictures, because you didn't know anything about the other guys. So how faces are processed? We found that Bruce and Young in 1968 and Weinberger and Burton in 2013, they suggesting a very interesting model to understand how our visual system processing human faces. The first stage in this model, which focusing on structure encoding. What is the meaning of structure encoding? Look at the face. You can get a lot of information about the face. One of these information, the color of the eyes, the color of the hair, the shape of the face. And this is something very important which direct to the visual processing. The second thing that you can find it associated with the face, when you're speaking with somebody, you find the voice recognition, and this is the speech. This speech can confirm some information about identity of the person. But the most interesting part on faces, you can recognize emotion. You can know if this person is happy, or this person is neutral, or this person is sad. So expression analysis just happening in the first stage when you are looking at faces. So when you're looking at faces, as I told you, all of these information are retrieved for the first time. When I receive this information, I go to the second stage, which represent in the face recognition unit. So what is face recognition unit? This is our store, which including a lot of information about different faces for those people who meeting them since the birth till this moment. In face recognition unit, I have to decide if this face matching one of the previous faces that I keep them in my store, or this is a new faces. So face recognition unit mainly focusing on the familiarity effect. If this face is familiar or this face is not familiar. Familiarity is something very important, which is processing the visual processing in the brain and transfer the information from one area to another area. Once you get this information and you decide this is familiar face, so you can just go for personal identity nodes, and this is associated with a certain area in the human brain, which start to make a link between the picture and the name and the information that you know about this person. What about if this face is not familiar? You start to create a new category. You start to set up an information network that collecting a lot of information about this person and trying to keep this information and make some kind of name retrieval. Just to make it easy for you, if I ask you, look at the picture on the right side and tell me the information, you can tell me about the name, you can tell me about the time of Dr. Khalid Sultan when he was the ex-rector of the university. You can tell me a lot of information. What about Tarik? You didn't know anything. Even you didn't know my full name. Maybe what you know, it is Tarik Abdelrheem. Is Abdelrheem second name? Is it family name? So what is his second name? What is his originality? What is about the other information related to this person? For understanding all of this information, researchers start using different technique to understand the connection between what is happening when we perceive and process the faces and how the brain can give us an explanation and retrieve the information about this person. And this is really make the faces are special. Interestingly, what is happening when some kind of information are missing? For example, what about if nose are removed? Mouth is not exist. And in fact, this is our case currently with a pandemic. Everyone wearing a mask. Some of the facial features are not exist anymore. Can you recognize your colleague? Can you recognize the people you know? Let us answering this question. We conduct a very interesting studies in 2017 here at KFUPM in cooperation with another university. And we present these kind of faces to different participants and asking them if they can recognize the same faces when you remove a certain feature. So we started to remove, for example, faces and presenting eyeless faces, or removing nose, noseless faces, or mouthless faces. And what's happening? We found that the people, they having the ability to recognize the familiar people, even if the nose or the mouth is not available. But interestingly, when eyes are removed, it is very difficult to recognize faces. Even while you are wearing a mask, all of the familiar people that you know and you have a direct contact with them, you have the ability to know them without asking them who you are, because it's easy for you, because eyes carrying a lot of information. It was a big question. Why eyes? What eyes can carry? In particular, if you're looking at our culture in the Middle East, you find the veil and our woman just wearing veil, and the only information is available, it is just eyes. So we have to understand. You can recognize even the female from your family, even if all of the information are heading and the eyes just appearing. Yes. The question now, how neuroscientists can explain this? They found that there is a specific neuron which processes the human brain when eyes exist, which making the recognition process, it is very easy to be perceived. In the absence of eyes, the only neurons are firing in the human brain, it is about face neuron, which mainly focusing on the shape of the face. These neurons is not enough to make the recognition. Interestingly, if you're looking at the eyes only, eyes activating both neurons of eyes and the face shape. So giving the same support like as eyes. And this is exactly what is happening. And this might explain for us why we still have the ability to recognize those people even they wear a face mask. Because eyes carrying not only the information which related to the eyes or the facial expression, but carrying some kind of activation which associated with the brain neuron that associated with these different faces. In particular, this is happening for familiarity. What about for unfamiliar faces? It's very difficult because you don't have any information in your store or memory, in particular visual memory. Make a link between the image that you can see and the new information. It wasn't exist in your memory. So how can you make this kind of magic? Actually, removing some certain feature just open another question for the researcher in the field of cognitive neuroscience. I believe Dr. Yahya introduced my PhD as cognitive neuroscience. So researcher start thinking about other visual modality which can helping to identify the personality in the absence of faces and facial expression. What about if the information about eyes is not exist? I wanted to recognize a person from distance. I couldn't see him well. Maybe I need a new glasses or telescope to see him. Is there other visual modalities can helping me to recognize the personality? Researcher found that there are two different modalities can helping me to identify the personality, and one of these modalities is voice recognition. So what is voice recognition? Let me just giving you an example. When a friend that you know and you contact with him more than 3 times contact you in the telephone, you didn't ask him to introduce himself or herself. Voices carrying a voice print, it's typically like as a fingerprint. Not only this, faces as well, carrying what we call a face print. Something very special, something very interesting to know and receive it correctly. Here, I'm not speaking about voices, but we found that body and body gesture could be an ideal category which helping me with more than 60% to identify the familiar people. So here in my seminar, and as I mentioned in the title, I will focus on the body. Why bodies? Why make body special? Making the body special because in the body and body gesture, you can get a lot of information about emotion. Even if you're looking at this picture in front of you, you can identify which one is scared or has deep fear, which one is happy, which one doesn't show any kind of emotion, and you couldn't understand at least the basic emotion. So body, in the absence of the information of the face, you still have the ability to recognize these kind of information related to the personality. So even emotion. Again, why bodies and body gesture and body language playing an important role? Because researchers in 2007, 2010, they figure out some kind of area which overlapping the face area and responding to the body similar to the face. Since 2007, researchers start to conduct a lot of research to understand why human bodies are special. So in 2015, I had the opportunity to publish this paper to investigate if body can capture attention to the same extent like as faces using a simple task, visual search task. What is the visual search task? I ask the participant always to identify butterfly and ignore other visual modalities or visual stimuli. When faces or body are exist, I found the reaction time just go higher. But in the absence of faces or body, I found that reaction time is short. This is give you a clear evidence using one of the simple model that bodies capture attention similar to faces. Okay. Even if the head part completely was removed, you still recognizing, as I mentioned to you, 60% of the information about personality. In fact, human bodies can inform you a lot of information about our emotion, about our intention. It is not typical like as faces, but give you a clue to understand the person in front of you. So we started in 2017 to discuss this possibility and see what is happening to these human bodies. We found that both faces and human bodies following the same model. When I wanted to process faces, I try to recognize these faces. I try to recognize the structure of faces. The structure of faces could include 2 eyes, nose, mouth in a certain arrangement. And this is comparable to human bodies: head, torso, arms, and legs. So the same feature and the same arrangement, it's just appearing in both faces and human bodies, which giving you the first order relationship information. First order relationship information, it means that I have to understand what is the connection between the head and the torso for the body, what is the connection between eyes and nose for the body. For my colleague in the field of engineering, you will recognize this when we're speaking in the second part of the presentation about facial recognition technology. And you know about facial recognition technology, which depending on to make a biometric model for the faces and facial features. Interestingly, we found an evidence from neuroimaging perspective, and in this evidence that both faces and human bodies are processed and following the structure information. Structure information, as I explained it here, for faces, which mainly focusing on the speech analysis, the emotional analysis, and the visual information related to the faces and the body. Many researchers believe that faces are processed holistically. What is the meaning of holistically? When I'm looking at the face, I have to look at the face as whole, while this evidence for body is not clear till this moment. Me and different group in Germany, as well in UK, they trying to confirm this. Till this moment, we have a lack evidence about this. While we found that second order relationship information, which mainly focusing on how can I make a connection between faces and the information that I can extract from the information and the information that I can get them from the body gesture or the body language. So this is a big question, and it is still a question of debate for the researcher in the field. As I told you, in the absence of the head part, you still can recognize body. You can extracting some certain information, in particular related to the emotion. Why this is happening? So during my PhD, I suggested this model. In this model, I assumed that the head has some certain neuron which be activated when this head appearing in corresponding to the body. But when the head is removed, you find the body can activating some area in the human brain and producing the same neurons. The same scenario happening when you present the head alone, even if the facial information is not exist or ambiguous. It's typical like as a picture that I give it to you. We confirm this usually in psychology by looking at inversion effect, when you just make the stimuli upside down to see and confirm the holistic processing, because holistic processing is getting disrupted when these stimuli just presented upside down. Oh, sorry. This is just make many of researchers. I believe that there is a group of researchers in Bochum in Germany. They're working on this model. I had the chance to work in the same model during my PhD as a part of my PhD, and we assumed that both faces and human bodies are following the same structure. The only thing or only exception that we couldn't recognize body recognition unit. Why? Because in face recognition unit, it's related to the familiarity effect of the faces. How can we get this familiarity effect of the bodies? So this is a big question, because bodies, yes, are special, but there is some similarity between the body of some people and another category of people. So this is just make this question become very clear. Now let me just go into the part that I promise. How can we use the application of face recognition in secure intelligence system or intelligence secure system? Okay, I'm just looking into Dr. Yahya when he asked me about this question. No, other Dr. Yahya. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, I'm just kidding. You know, the first application for face recognition, you can use it for safety and security in the West, in the United States nowadays, as well as in Great Britain. I am aware that they start to use airport checkpoint. So no need to present your passport to the custom officer and you go directly to the machine, identify you, open the gate for you, and getting in. But this is open many of the privacy issue in the West. How the system keeping a lot of information about me. I am not happy to keep this information about me. I don't like anybody or any machine to save a lot of amount and information about this. Researchers, to avoid this idea, they came up with the idea of the average faces. Are you familiar about average faces? Did you hear about this concept before? Let me just explain average faces for you. Average faces, the idea of the average faces, by taking a picture for the same individual in different period, and after that trying to find a function which helping to identify the most important features. This average faces, it is not identical to the original faces, but mainly focusing on the distance between the eyes and nose, the distance between right eyes and left eyes, between different facial features. Keeping the same basic information which related to face, but in the same time keeping privacy. So this is one of the applications of the faces. The second application of the face recognition technique can helping police to identify criminals or find missing people. You can imagine the situation if you have face recognition system, and this face recognition system exists in the public places or public streets in the kingdom. If you wanted to know the people who overstayed visa, for example, without asking the public helping you, you can recognize this by using one of the face recognition technique. For bank identification, if you don't have your card, you couldn't get the money. And you have to go for emergency transfer or emergency amount that some of the company just provide, and you have to provide a password. Is this correct? What about if this face recognition exists on this machine? It's easy. Go to the machine, put your face, your bank account will be open. No hacker can fake this easily because he needs to do a lot of procedure to get the right metric for your faces and facial expression. This is another application for this technology. For us in academic field, we're facing a problem with attendance with the student. Sometimes using QR code, sometimes we calling the names, or even in the company or the business. So what do you think? If we have just a face recognition technology in front of the class, and this is just take a picture, identify the person, and so on. This will be great, making our life easy, not wasting time of the class time. So this is another application for this technology. Another application, another application, it could be this kind of technology in the future, maybe in the near future, inshallah, a replacement for the physical identity, not carrying your iqama, not carrying your passport to identify yourself, because everything was exist in the system. Even if you want to book a room in the hotel and you forget your passport, for example, or you forget your iqama, or you forget your ID, and you couldn't confirm if the woman with you is your wife or not. With this face recognition unit or recognition technology, you can do this. Another thing, it's very interesting, and maybe you'll find that in the future, near future, it's related to the cars. And this is something related to industry. Nowadays, instead of the keys, you have the print, al-basma. You can just press on this print or this button, and you can start the car. What about if you forget this print somewhere? What would be happen? You couldn't use your car. What about if somebody else steal your basma? He can steal your car. This is easy. What about if your car just working with your face print. So this is something we have to think about it in the future, because this is considered something very important to the industry. In the business, if you are in business or management and you wanted to target a certain group to convince them about certain product using facial recognition technology, you can approaching this group and asking about their experience about the product or whatever. It's easy, even for the research. We can identify our sample in particular. If you are working in the field of social science, you can do this and you conduct quantitative research. Now the question, what about the body? You told us in the title of the presentation, these applications not only for faces, but is there some kind of application maybe exist for the body recognition? One of the nice application that I found it, and I work on it actually since the summer, it is about the research. How can you identify emotion? Why emotion is important? You wanted to hire someone. You wanted to be sure that you're hiring the right person for the right job. You wanted to get a personality profile about this person without any faking information. Maybe one of the psychologists here, Dr. Bandania, telling me, personality tests can do this. Yes, you're right. But nowadays, there are many of the training center giving a training for the applicant to these kind of tests. So the percentage of faking, it starts to be increased from one day to another day. Are you agree with me, Dr. Bandania? Yeah, I agree. Yes, this is actually the fact. I just mentioned Dr. Bandania because both of us are psychologists, you know. So this is actually the case. So the idea here, how can we find a reliable tool which, depending on technology, which helping me to recognize and anticipate the personality profile about different people? One of the research was conducted about the body in the absence of the information of faces, showing you that body reacting differently to different emotion. Maybe you can see this in front of you. Looking at the happiness and what is happening in happiness and the activation in different area, they're using a certain technology which depend to measure the arousal changes which happening in the body. Or you're feeling comfortable, or you're feeling sad, or you're feeling angry, or you're feeling surprised or neutral. By using this idea, we found this idea, it's very interesting, which helping the people in the field of business to make a person identification profile for business purpose. As I told you, I believe that some of you in the administration, and you wanted to hire the good candidate, and you're suffering. You have hundreds of applications in front of you. You have to evaluate this application. You have to take a decision. Sometimes, I'm sorry for saying that, decision is not the right decision. Sometimes you have somebody staying for 1 term, 2 terms, and after that disappear. This is the case. This is exactly what is happening. So here, by recognizing during the interview or during the interview, by recording some of the signs which are related to the body, can help me to create a profile for him. This profile could be in line with the results of the personality test and confirming the personality profile. What about if it is an opposite or contradictory? So in this case, there is a problem. And I have to ask myself, what is the problem exactly? Because this kind of technology, you couldn't cheat them. This is biometric measures that you are using to identify if this person is aggressive or this person is trustworthy. This is the reason we found this could be applicable to select the right applicant for the right job. And this is just make the people thinking to make a link between the body recognition and other human behavior. How can I identify this person is honest? How can I identify this person is trustworthy? This is helping even to take some kind of action. And this is a study that mentioned all of this information. So I found this idea, it's a very interesting idea. So I approached Dr. Mohammed Feldman, the director of the Research Center of Secure Intelligence System or Intelligence Secure System. And I told him, I'm interested to work with you. And he asked me about my idea. I told him, yes, I wanted to work in the different technology, and I will work in the psychological part, and you guys, you can use machine learning or different technique to set up this machine, and helping me to see what is the role of facial features and body gesture and voice recognition in detecting personal identity. And he told me, what's your intention? I told him my intention, I wanted to provide an accurate profile for each individual, even for our student. We need to know what is the profile of the ideal student, who is a good achiever, who working hard, who can continue in the university. We're facing this problem in the university. Some students joining 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, drop the university and get transferred to another university. This is happening in academia in general. I'm not speaking about KFUPM, I'm speaking in general. So this is something I start working on it, and I got grant from the research center. During the summer, we had one of undergraduate student in SURE program involving the student, undergraduate student in research, Hassan al-Safar. Hassan actually came with this idea, and he asked me and consulted with me, can we detect different facial expression by looking at the changes in the temperature of the faces and the body when participant was exposed to different stimuli with different emotion? I told him, yes, we can. From psychological perspective, we can see if there is any changes in the temperature of the body or faces, and we can do this. So thankfully, Dr. Mohammed provided this camera for us. It is one of the basic camera. And I said, okay, let us try this camera and see the results. And after that, if we found something promising, we can go for the next step, and we can bring more accurate and more expensive camera. So Hassan, during the summer, he's just focusing on one of the most critical emotion, which representing anger. Why anger? Because anger emotion associated with aggressive behavior and hostility. So I wanted to know if when the participant looking at the faces are angry faces or some scenes which makes them angry, this is make some kind of changes in their body and faces or not. So participant faces and hands were recorded while they are processing angry faces. So this is actually the design. We asked the participant during the summer to come and participate in this experiment. And I asked the participant to do one of the simple visual tasks by matching between two different faces or two different objects. At the same time, if you're looking at here, you find here the camera, which connected to the mobile phone. We just start taking a picture for the participant in a certain time. We tried to connect the camera to the computer and make triggering, but unfortunately we didn't succeed because this camera is not high quality. So let us see. And we start recording what is happening in the temperature of the face and what is happening to the temperature of the hand as a part of the body. We instructed the participant to keep the hand up. So this is exactly what we did during the summer, and this is the task. Why I used angry faces? According to psychological literature and according to the social signal theory, this kind of emotion can be transferred from one person to another person. Let me just giving you a small example to confirm what I'm saying. If you find one of your colleagues is sad or angry, you find yourself uncomfortable, and after a while you find yourself sad or angry. You couldn't imagine this emotion. Why is this happening to you? Is it empathy? Or there is some signal which is transferred from this person to another person? So this is a question. This is the reason we decided to present angry faces or neutral faces and see how the participant receiving this and how this is would affecting their temperature. And this is the results. Dr. Mohammed Feldman and Hassan working in a code to detect the temperature in a certain feature. In, for example, in the left cheek, right cheek, the nose, maxillary, chin, lip, left eyes and right eyes, and forehead. I'm just using this abbreviation because if I write all of these words, it will not good. And we started to detect and understand, is there any changes in the temperature of the faces when our participants are exposed to angry faces? And this is exactly what we found. Angry for dark color, neutral for light color. So thermal data, which measuring the temperature of the face of the participant, while they proceeding with a simple task to decide if these both neutral faces or angry faces are same or different, this is exactly what we found. We found here there is some increasing in the temperature in forehead. We found an opposite button in the left cheek. We found the opposite button in the right cheek. But here, if you're looking at the nose, you find there is increasing in the temperature, not only in the nose. If you're going here to the maxillary part, you find there is increasing in the temperature. So what does it mean? It means that some of the facial features can be receiving this emotion in a certain and a specific way. So if we really wanted to build a profile, and in this profile, to anticipate the behavior of the people in the future, we can using such technique. As I told you, this is just a small experiment. We conducted this experiment in 49 participants, and we lost 11 participants. And this is a huge number. You can imagine the situation. When you analyze the data, you find something you couldn't understand. You find that the participant not focusing, and the error rates, it is increased. So you have to omit those participants. So this is something that we did it during the summer. Let me just sharing something with you about the future research. I believe that I have 2 minutes. Yes, 2 minutes. 3 minutes, perfect. So I have this slide and the second slide. So what about the future research? I am a psychologist, as I told you. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist. So I have to think about technology as I wanted to help the people in business and industry to build a profile, personal profile, which helping the employer to choose the right person for the right job. I can help the people in the medical field. What is medical field? The doctors. How can I help them? How many misdiagnoses happening every year? In particular, if this misdiagnose related to some of the psychological disorder, such as autism or such as ADHD or other psychological disorder. I'm sorry for saying that. We are human. We don't make mistakes. Why I choose autism? Why I choose ADHD? Because by looking at the children, and this is a part of my training in Bochum in 2013, I was in the College of Clinical Psychology. So I was interested about this. So if you're looking at those children who are suffering from the autism or suffering from ADHD, they can show some sign from the age of 6 months. You can imagine the situation if you have a concrete and precise diagnosis for this problem from 6 months. The doctor can interfere and they can get, inshallah, a good results. Why we didn't, or why is this misdiagnosis happening? Because first of all, parents, they didn't know. The doctor sometimes they getting confused about autism, spectrum autism, and sometimes about autistic features. They're mixing up about this phenomenon. The same scenario about ADHD and activity level. So this is something I would prefer, inshallah, maybe in the cooperation with IAI Center, we can work on something like this. At the end, I would like to acknowledge, I'm very grateful to IRCs for Secure Intelligence System for giving me this grant. I'm working with this grant. We started during the summer, and we will continue in the same line of research. I would like to thank Dr. Mohammed Philbman for his support, as usual. As well, I would like to thank Hassan Safar. And at the end, I would like to thank you for your attention and time for questions. Thank you very much.
Dr. Tarik, for this very informative presentation and for your enthusiasm. It's very much appreciated. Now we have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So maybe let's start with the question that was raised by Dr. Zaidour at the beginning. So let me give you my answer. Because I have developed some theory while Dr. Tarik was speaking. It seems that when you talk about intelligence, you're talking about the behavior. So the behavior is intelligent. And when you talk about intelligence itself, it's really more about capability in the system. This is what basically I think.
Yeah, but maybe I agree with you because I don't have a clear answer for this question.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
You discussed some of the things that are related to authentication, concept of security.
Yes.
Because everybody is using authentication, the banks, everywhere.
Even Facebook nowadays, if you remember.
Authentication process. So one of the concepts that we use in the mobile as well is the biometric thumb expression. If you see that you are the right person. So you have given different examples like the policing, and that you can find out people who are overstaying. So still, like you can comment.
Yes,
Like the face recognition and thumb expression, like if we want to see the identity of the person. Is there any difference between that?
Let me just tell you something very important. Nowadays, even for authentication using fingerprint, if I understand you correctly, sometimes it could be fake. Some people can faking the fingerprint. They can creating this a small material which just copying the same fingerprint. My idea here and my message, if we have different ways of authentication, we just keeping the security of the data, security of the information, we even can succeed for helping those people to be more secure in their life. For example, if somebody facing a problem with amnesia, for example, and this is happening most likely with the old people, I wanted to find this person. If I have a technology, and in this technology, I can recognize his facial expression, and I can confirm his identity using fingerprint, for example, this is what helped me to solve one of the society problem. So it is still different measure, because here we're speaking about security. Look at the email of the university nowadays. If you wanted to access the email of the university, not only the username and the password, you have to get the code from your mobile phone and put it as the second step of verification. Why is he doing this? Because it's easy to attack your email if you couldn't secure the email. The same scenario here. We wanted to secure the personality. We wanted to secure the individual. We wanted to be sure as an agency or governments that we can reach different people, we can help different people. One of the applications, for example, if you are in the hospital, for example, and there is facial expression technology or technique, and somebody suffering from heart attack suddenly without anybody notice. If we have this technology in the reception of the hospital, this technology can detect this, informing the doctor, informing the medical team to come to this person and helping him. So no need now to put his fingerprint to know exactly. Did you get my point? So this is actually what I would say about this.
So do you have any follow-up?
Authentication is the same concept. Maybe the application that you're mentioning.
Yeah.
That will be in a different dimension. But authentication-wise, I think it's the same concept for you fingerprints or the face.
Yes, yes, I told you. Yeah, this is what I agree with you. I agree that these two different ways, but everyone, I have to look at what is the application of it. As I give you this example about this person who facing heart attack. So this is something very important, you know? Yes, okay.
Okay, so let's take one question from the online audience, and then I'll come back to you. So there is a question from Abdullah Al-Ahdal. He says, I would like to ask regarding the face temperature and how it does affect face recognition. My question is there a standard range of face or body temperature for human beings associated with personality, happy, angry? So is there like a spectrum for?
Yes, there is a spectrum actually.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the papers that I mentioned it in 2014, these papers showing there is a range or a spectrum for different emotions. Always angry faces associated with increasing the temperature of the body or the faces. But if you're looking at the positive emotion, like as happiness, for example, or life satisfaction or well-being, this is not causing any kind of temperature differences between the status or emotional status and the neutral expression. So there is a spectrum. There are many of evidence in the literature nowadays, and using these kind of clues helping us to identify which kind of emotion I can identify it using not only thermal data or temperature, but using different technique, such as reaction time, for example. I have to know.
But there is no any standard yet.
Till this moment, no, because they started this kind of research in 2014. It's still ongoing research, meaning of different group working on this topic. Till this moment, I couldn't, maybe there is nothing in my mind now, but I couldn't find till this moment, as far as I know, anything reliable to tell you about there is a certain values or certain spectrum for each emotion.
Okay. Question from Dr. Alawi.
That the fingerprint, face, iris, it is same authentication.
Yes.
So, and you said that if there is a camera or something, they can't catch your image. That just means that your face also is not secret, and the system is not secure.
And this is the reason that I discussed the idea of average
Same as
faces.
fingerprint, only I want
No. This is the idea of the average faces, because these face recognition technology, and if you're just reading a little bit about them, not only depending on the biometric differences between the facial features, also how can you show different expression, different emotion? What is the changes happening on these facial features? So all of these measures exist to make authentication for the personality and the persons. Did you get my point? Okay.
Okay, there is two issues that were raised by people in the online audience. The first one was related to ethics, when you talked about the identification of people.
Yes.
So somebody was asking how ethical is this identification going to be?
Okay, so about ethics, it's related to the policy of the organization or the policy of the government. So it should be there is a clear policy before using such technology. People in the West and Britain as well, they raising this issue about privacy. I mentioned this in the presentation. They didn't like to keep their personal photo in a system, and this system can chase them anytime. And this is the reasons meaning of the research group coming with the idea of the average faces, which helping them to identify the most prominent features and creating biometric measure, which helping to identify the person without keeping a recent photo for him.
Okay.
So this is my answer for this.
So basically, it depends on the law.
Yes, depending on the law and policy.
Yeah.
It should be there is a clear policy. Here we're speaking about application, but about policy, something very important as well.
The other issue is related to privacy. When you talked about profiling the students, and you basically you gave the example of doing the experiment here on campus. So basically, to profile the students and monitor their behavior, you will need to have like
consent
all over the place. I don't think the student will be happy, right?
Yeah,
كاميرات في كل محل وكذا profiling. No way. So how we are going to handle this privacy issue?
My idea about creating a profile for the student, not putting a camera everywhere in the campus. The idea actually, I wanted to identify the creative student. I found some student coming to me and identify themselves as a hard worker or something like this. And I wanted to offer a job for him. He's one of our students. He deserved to get a job at KFUPM. So in these cases, I can asking him to take a test, personality test. Just come take some picture about the camera to create a profile for you. And we have to take a permission from any participant.
So it's a controlled experiment.
Yes, it's controlled experiment.
It's
yes.
a very controlled experiment.
Yes,
So
and
don't worry, guys. Huh?
yes, and for the student, we ask them to participate in this experiment during the summer. We have this consent. We ask them and we take agreement. And when the student saying no, I'm not happy to participate in this experiment, we tell him, no problem, go. This is fine for us. Yeah. And we mentioned this is just for scientific purpose, not for any commercial purpose.
Yeah. I found the idea of the average face very fascinating, and I was trying to relate it to generative adversarial networks and AI and machine learning. So the whole idea of the average face is basically to protect the privacy of the people and also to maintain some useful information for the system to act on.
Yes, definitely.
But somehow the face at the end of the day is fake with some real features, right? So I'm just trying to think about the security and people, they can attack the system with fake faces maybe, because you are not really preserving the actual face. Yes. It's a limited set of features. Have you looked into this?
Actually, I had a chance when I was in Germany to contact with Dr. Mike Burton, Professor Mike Burton. He was in Glasgow this time. He working in this project with Heathrow Airport in England. And he just presented 2 seminars when I was a PhD student in my department in Friedrich-Schiller University. And they have a very nice technique. When they start creating average faces, they not only creating average faces depending on fixed picture, but using a dynamic video as well, just to understand how the reaction of the person when he gets surprised, when he gets angry, when he gets happy, and so on. These measures exist in the system. It's not only a fixed picture, which take by photograph and just make averaging or make some kind of image manipulation to create this one. But inside the technology, there is some information related to your reaction. Even if you succeeded to fake the picture, how can you fake your reaction to the expression in particular? You are not aware about this person.
Okay.
The only way to fake this, you wanted to monitor or spy on this person, recording different video for him, getting a lot of picture from different period in different occasion, and after that trying to use the same technique to create average faces. Did you get my point?
Yeah. So
This is something not easy. Even I wanted today to give you a clue about how can they create average faces. Actually, I couldn't succeed because this is something I believe it's not so easy to present just in 45 minutes. It takes long time to tell you about the steps.
So basically, yeah, the time dimension, the temporal things, because you're taking several pictures over
Yes,
time. So
yes.
that will,
So this is very difficult to be faked from the people who hacking the system and so on. Even if they hacking the system, they can get the image, but they couldn't get other measure which identify personality. This is as far as I know.
Okay. Regarding to the face recognition routine, I think it still depends on the application. Some application that I will consider it maybe a bit weak, maybe, but let me say my point, maybe there's a way out for it. I've found a situation whereby there are certain points of mine. They are very identical, twins, I mean, very identical, to the extent that even the phones, the Hassan's phone can be unlocked by Husseini's phones.
Yeah.
And it's, but as in, even their parent at times, they have to talk before they can get it. But with face, I think they are very hard to notice. Then in terms of, in that situation now, since we're not created, human beings are created by Allah, so I believe you cannot fake the finger, you cannot fake the thumbprint, even if you are identical. But with the thumbprint, I believe it's different line. So I believe in that kind of situation, the fingerprint or the thumbprinting system will be more perfect in that kind of situation. I think that's, I don't know, maybe there is.
Yeah, totally. I'm agree with you. Actually, if you're looking at the idea of identifying personality, even I mentioned this when I present for you my projects that I'm working on it. Not only faces considered as the only measure to identify personality. Maybe I can use the fingerprint, as you mentioned. I can use the voice recognition because everyone has his own voice tone. There is a frequency for his voice. I can use as well his body gesture and his body language when he reacts. All of these measures just helping to make some kind of improvement for the technology that we use that facilitate our life. Because the idea behind technology, we need something to make our life easy. So this is the idea, but I agree with you, yeah.
Okay, so I think that's all the time we have. So on behalf of the Center Director, Dr. Mohammed Filimban, and all the faculty members affiliated with the center, would like to thank Dr. Tarik for this very informative and useful presentation. Let's give him another round of applause, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this is very encouraging.
Yeah.
You know,
And
I'm
also,
a psychologist and coming for
and also I would like to thank you all for attending, and also I'd like to thank the people in the online audience, and we look forward to have you with us again in a future seminar. Thank you, guys.